Hello. Hi, Corey. Can you hear me?
Hello, hello. It's good to
I
see you.
think,
You all right?
yes, I think there's a little bit of lag right now in our connectivity issues. But I think it's good to go. How are
Yeah,
you
I
today?
agree. There's probably a 3 second delay, a 3 second delay. So we'll have to speak like old school, you know?
Really pause and reflect and be coaches.
Yeah, exactly right.
How are you doing today?
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Are we live now?
We are live now. Yes, and I'm going to
Perfect.
go with the first question, which is the first quote. Where
Yeah,
just been inspired by what you just shared. This is something that I deeply resonate with as well. What you say, where leaders won't be replaced by AI, but they might be replaced by someone who knows how to lead in a world run by it.
yes.
I'd like to, I'd like you to unpack that for the audience today, right?
Sure.
What do you mean by that, and where you're coming from when you
Yeah.
say that?
Look, AI is probably not going to replace your job in the next few years, but people who are in your job that can use AI will replace those that don't. And that's happening right now. And that's happening in every job. So I had the regional director of learning and development for major multinational bank. We were out to coffee last week, and I was talking to him about executive coaching for his president and everything. And he was like, "Oh, I'm not so sure." And we were talking about AI, and I said, "Your president needs to understand how to implement AI." And he says, "Well, I'm not quite sure how to implement AI." And I said, "Listen, in 10 minutes, I'm going to replace your job." And he's like, "What do you mean?" So I opened up my laptop, clicked onto ChatGPT, used one of the models to build a prompt for building an LLM and training an LLM to replace a regional head of L&D for a major multinational bank. And then I popped that prompt into Perplexity, and then used research in Perplexity to rebuild that prompt until it was a massive training document. Then I popped that back into ChatGPT to train a GPT called the head of L&D for a major multinational bank. GPT trained it within 3-4 minutes. It was done. Popped that back out, and then we looked at the GPT, and I said, "Now ask it anything you need to know about your job, and it will do as good or better than you probably can." He was like, he just couldn't believe the quality of output. And I said, "Okay, now I did that for you in 10 minutes. Who's doing that for the president of your bank? Because I know that the president of one of your competitors' banks can do this."
Yeah. So the
So it's
conversation is
just,
really about how to remain relevant in a world where we are becoming more and more irrelevant, right?
that's exactly right. Okay, there were Luddites in the late 90s. I remember who were like, "Oh, we don't need email. We've got fax machines. It's fine." And then there was the kickoff against Excel. Like, who needs to learn Excel? And the thing is, I remember the debates about accountancy, and as soon as the scientific calculator was invented in the late 70s, we don't need accountants anymore, right? And then suddenly, yes, we need accountants, but then now they know how to use a calculator. And then in Excel, came in, everybody's like, "Oh my goodness, we're not going to need accountants anymore." Yes, we still need accountants, but they know how to use Excel. And then we created SPSS for analytics and productivity and predictiveness, and everybody's like, "Oh my goodness, now we're not going to need accountants anymore." But yes, we have accountants, but they know how to use SPSS for quantitative analysis and predictive analytics. And now we've got artificial intelligence, and people are like, "Oh my goodness, we're not going to need accountants anymore." We do, but we need accountants that know how to use artificial intelligence. So, and that is the same in every role. So we need doctors and lawyers and managers and leaders and CEOs, but we need them to learn how to augment what they already know with artificial intelligence to make them faster, stronger, smarter. That's it. Those that do will survive. Those that don't might be looking for other work.
And I know you are the doctor and you do a lot of deep research and you've written books and everything. And neuroscience is a subject that you hold very close to your heart, right?
Yeah,
Or to your
very,
head.
very much.
My question is this: what's happening in a leader's brain when they achieve true clarity? And before they achieve it, what's stopping them from achieving clarity?
Oh, that's a very good question. Achieving clarity, I think what happens in a leader's brain is they drop into a flow state. And in a flow state, neurohypofrontality is what we call it in neurosciences. Neurohypofrontality means your prefrontal cortex shuts down. Your brain drops from about 24 hertz, where it is now, to about 8 hertz. And you slip into a flow state. And because your PFC is shut down, you don't have any sense of time, no sense of will, no sense of identity, no narratives. There's nothing saying you're too old, too short, too fat, too stupid, too young. All of those narratives are gone. And then you're doing most of the processing in the back matter of your head, where you've got billions of bits of processing power, whereas the PFC has a limiter of about 120 bits per second. So what happens when you reach like incredible moments of clarity is actually your view of yourself goes to sleep. And the clarity comes from not having any of those limitations on your view of the world, whatever it is that you're trying to do. So you can be unbelievably creative. Studies on flow show that you'll learn 4.5 times more effectively in flow when you're out to lunch, when the CEO is out to lunch. You'll be 500% more productive, which so it means you can get done in one day what any of your steady state peers would take a whole week to do. And they become more accurate, more creative. It's incredible when a leader gets into a flow state. That's when they do their best work, is when they get out of the way of themselves. So that's what's happening in their brain when that happens.
And what I'm just realizing right now is that's how you are as children. That's how you are when you're young adults, and that's how you are growing up. And then suddenly somewhere, when these titles and these responsibilities and roles come in, you forget all of this. So what's probably the reason because of which the more they go up higher, they lose this sense of belonging to themselves and connected to themselves? What do you think is the reason?
Well, actually, from a brain development standpoint, like the prefrontal cortex, where your sense of will is, your sense of identity and all of that, it's the newest part of the brain, but it's also the last to finish forming. Your brain doesn't actually finish forming until you're around 24, 25 years old. And that's when it's fully formed. But this part here that gives you like the most amount of control and takes away from a lot of your creativity, that's the last piece. So that's what's actually physiologically happening, is over the course of your life, you are absorbing a tremendous amount of information really, really quickly, because you spend a lot of your childhood in a flow state. You're absorbing that information. You're very creative. You're wiring your brain through all of the experiences that you collect as a child and through all of the information that you interact with. But then the part that finishes forming last is the brakes. So we have the ability as adults to control our behavior in spite of our feelings. We can control, we don't have to respond to our emotions. We can control our thoughts. We can create new biases, create new heuristics and stuff. But those tools, they develop a little later in life.
And probably they're not exercising it correctly. Is that the reason why they go into a space where it's not serving them?
Yeah, I think people, they do what works for them, and they do what takes the least amount of energy. So very quickly you learn, if I do this and this and this, then this will happen. That becomes a heuristic. The heuristic is a best practice. So best practice for meeting members of the opposite sex, best practice for studying for an exam. You know, some people study months ahead, some people cram the night before, right? But you learn your best practice, and that becomes a heuristic. The challenge with heuristics is, first of all, they're heuristics. They're amazing, right? It's a shortcut for getting something done because it's been successful a number of times. The more times you do it and the more successful it is, the less you'll pay attention to it. So you're not going to be aware of your heuristic over time. And if you're using a heuristic for making business decisions, for example, it can age out. Like it can run out of value. So what happens is, like, there's an arc where it's super, super successful, and then it stops being as successful, and then it starts being unsuccessful. And my friend Marshall Goldsmith wrote a book about that called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And it's about specifically that. Like, people, they lose that creativity because they're full of all of these biases and filters and categories and heuristics that have made them successful in the past, and they can't even see that they're using them. So they just think somehow something's wrong with the world, and what got them here isn't getting them there, and they're not as successful as they used to be, and they don't know why. And the reason is because there's a knowledge, or there's a success half-life on heuristics like that. And if we don't have somebody in our lives that'll help us to see them, then we might not even be aware of the heuristics that we're using and why they're not being successful.
And these people who reflect for them, or who help them, or coaches, or whatever that is, whoever that is for them, who help them reflect on the heuristic, usually is not within the organization, and usually people are not having safe conversations at the workplace. What do you think?
Yeah, it's true. Like,
for that.
Yeah, it's true. Like most people, they'll question their biases, heuristics, limiting beliefs, and all of that only in the company of maybe a therapist or a best friend, somebody who's a confidant who can actually see it. But I think what's most successful is if you're with a professional. I mean, there are professionals that are taught to identify them. Therapists are professionals that deal with, psychological decisions and decision making, looking backwards. They look at your life and try to fix the holes and, see where you went wrong and understand your behaviors and deal with your traumas and stuff. And coaches are psychologists that look at the future, right? We don't really look at the traumas and things of the past. We're more concerned with your performance now. We're very future facing and very performance oriented. But the tools that psychiatrists or psychologists or therapists and coaches use are very much the same. We want to understand your patterns of thinking, where you might have a limiting belief holding you back. We want to open up your mind to consider new options for behaviors and for attitudes and choices that you might make, and overall to increase your performance, either by living a more healed life from a therapeutic standpoint or by performing better from a coaching standpoint.
Brilliant. And all right, Corey, so the main objective of this podcast is to help managers become more effective as leaders, right? And I want more and more people to really stand up, level up, and reach the best potential of how they operate and look at the world and look at the people around them. But they're always struggling with the constraints that the corporate world throws at them.
Sure.
So the question which I put up over there is, how do managers create meaningful work within corporate constraints?
Yeah, it's amazing. Actually, the most meaningful work you can create, it doesn't cost any money at all. So if you're using carrots and sticks to motivate your employees, they'll probably turn into donkeys because you're treating them like donkeys. Carrots and sticks, they motivate mules, right? But if you want to treat your employees like humans, then you're going to have to look at them as million-year-old apex predators, right? Like each and every one of your employees is the result of 10,000 successful iterations of an improving survival and adaptation machine. The reality is none of them work for you. All of them are working for themselves, and all of them are working for goals that have nothing to do with the products and services of the organization, much less the improvement of your quality of life. So let's look at that. Let's look at the selfish motives for employees to actually show up to work. They're there because they've got goals that are outside of the organization. They want to buy a nice house or a car. They want to give their kids the education option of their choice, or they want to take care of their parents in their old age. Whatever it is, their goals aren't you. They're not the company, and they're not the products and services of the organization. So if you can connect your people with their reason for being there, which is their why. So Simon Sinek got that right. But I think also with each other, which is their who. And I would probably start with who, actually, because I found that most humans, most of the time, we're willing to collect garbage, and we think it's a great idea as long as we enjoy the people we're doing it with and we know why we're doing it, right? If we like the why and we like the who, then the what really doesn't matter anymore. And then profitability and performance and productivity that become a byproduct of that, connecting what we're doing every day with the fact that we like who we're doing it with and we know why we're doing it. So that's what you want to connect with, is you want to help people to answer the question, why are you here, right? And not somewhere else, because you made this choice. And then why are you here and not someone else? And the answer to the first question is your personal vision for your personal life and your personal goals that we're achieving through this economic tribe. And the answer to the second question is your personality, your values, your behaviors, and the people that you connect with.
I'm going to connect this to the book that you wrote called Love at Work. And what prompted you to come out with that book?
My irritation with the world. Samira, all of my books are a product of my irritation.
I think you delivered it. I know you delivered a TED Talk, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's the one.
You became a real student of the book, yeah? You have the book with you?
It was
again? Can I see the book again?
Oh, yeah.
Can I see the book?
Here.
Yes. Where can they buy it if anyone wants to buy it? It's available on Amazon?
Yeah, Amazon.
Yeah.
Everywhere. Yeah. If you live in Dubai and you have a business and you just want to meet me for coffee, I'll just bring one for you. But
amazing.
Listen, all of my books are the product of my irritation with the world, and I think this one was the most disappointing. I was disappointed that I had to write the book because I was looking around for it and it wasn't written. Nobody had written it. Okay, so I read dozens of books on leadership every year. And I'm always reading books about empathy and shared values and belonging on teams and discretionary effort and psychological safety. But the highest form of all of those things is love. We have a word for that. Okay, the highest form of trust, the highest form of discretionary effort is love. The highest form of belonging is love. The highest form of psychological safety is also love. So why, if these things are the biggest things that we're talking about in leadership, why are we not talking about the highest form of those biggest things? It was just really irritating and disappointing for me that nobody had written a book on that, and so I wrote that. And anyway, that's where it came from. It turns out that love at work is intensely profitable, not just better for people. The math is that if people feel loved at work, they will be healthier, they will be happier, they are willing to work for less money, but we actually pay them more because they're higher performing and more productive, which leads to better profits. So it kind of looks like a win-win-win-win-win to me. Oh, also, statistically speaking, people who feel loved and connected in their workplace, they live longer lives. So yeah, they get rewarded better, they perform better, they live longer, they're healthier, they're happier, and we make more money. So why wouldn't we do that? Anyway, that's why I wrote the book.
So what, according to you, is the reason why we live in a messed up world where this is not the default setting?
Look, the messed up world is just the way that the world is. Like, yeah, most of our ancestors earned us the right to be born by surviving the world, and most of our history was scarcity and violence. Our ancestors earned us the right to be born by surviving famine, flood, war, disease, and they made it work. So they've given us a tremendous number of tools that are designed to help us to survive in a world that doesn't exist anymore, a world of scarcity and violence. Meanwhile, the world that we've created for ourselves is a world of abundance. We have never had such great access to communications, technology, transportation, opportunities for advancement. Like, the quality of life that we live now, our ancestors could never have dreamed of, right? They fought for a meal a day, and we've got Taliban. Like, they could not have prepared us for that. Meanwhile, like, our evolutionary psychology, it evolves incrementally, step by step, generation by generation, separated by 20 or 30 years between generations. There's an increment, right? But our technology, the abundance of the world has evolved exponentially. So now we find ourselves filled with great tools to help us survive in scarcity and violence, but surrounded by opulence and comfort and convenience. And when we don't know how to deal with that. And that's probably what's the most messed up thing about the world, is that we have so much abundance and we don't know how to share, because all of our ancestors prepared us for scarcity. So we don't share. We don't share because sharing was not a great practice for survival, right? So even though there's more than enough to go around, we don't share because we don't have tools for that. And we don't have tools for complexity either. Our ancestors made maybe 20, 30 major decisions in a day. We are now averaging around 35,000 decisions per day, according to Harvard, 4,500 human interactions a day, if you include online, and around 2,100 to 2,200 of those decisions are going to be about food, where our ancestors, they ate what was in front of them. Us, we're spoiled for choice, and we're scrolling Taliban and we can't even decide what to eat.
So how would you answer the question that's on the screen right now?
Which ancient survival instincts sabotage modern managers? Oh, yeah. First of all, opportunity and threat. If you ever see a manager get angry, okay, this is a really good one, because anger is not really an emotion. Anger is a physiological threat response. All animals get angry. Dogs bark, okay? They get angry. And so what happens is the amygdala floods the brain and the body with adrenaline and cortisol and vasopressin, and you have this. They get red because their blood is actually pumping more and their heart is pumping faster. And then they get big and they puff up their chest, and then their volume gets loud and they start yelling when they're angry. Why? Why do you get louder and stronger when you're yelling? Because you're preparing to fight or flee. It is a threat response. If you back an animal into a corner, they will prepare to fight or flee. That is what animals do when they get threatened. So when your manager gets threatened and he starts raising his voice, you have to keep in mind that it's a physiological threat response. It's not really an emotion. And at the root of that physiological threat response is a threat. They are feeling vulnerable. They're feeling threatened. Okay. So what is it? Is it pain? Is it the threat of embarrassment? Is it the threat of disrespect? But it's an old tool that we don't really need anymore. It's designed to help us to survive in a world that doesn't really exist. A world where, yeah, if another apex predator was standing in front of you and you were yelling at each other, you might actually end up in a fight. And if you end up in a fight, one of you might not make it out of that fight, because up until 3 old people ago, murder was an acceptable form of communication in most parts of the world. It still is, actually, in many parts of the world. But yeah, those are the tools that we've been given that will help us to survive in a world that doesn't exist anymore. And so managers who get angry really are just feeling vulnerable. And if you can identify what the threat is and speak to the threat, then you're gonna have a much better time, or much easier time, dissipating that anger.
So is the manager supposed to speak to the threat that is internal by himself, or is it supposed to be with his colleagues or some coach who comes and does it? What is the approach that they should adopt to speak to the threat? When you say speak to the threat, what is the framework?
Both. Yeah. So if the real art is noticing, right? We don't notice much. We're not very mindful. So the real art is if you're the manager and you notice that you're angry, your volume's going up, and you notice that you're angry, then you can speak to the threat. Why am I feeling threatened? What's the threat here? I feel like if this doesn't get done on this time, then that will decrease my perception of performance with my boss, and that might impact on the amount of money that I can bring home to my family, and might impact on the quality of life for my family and my wife and kids, whatever it is. Okay, so that's the actual threat. The threat is this person's lack of performance is going to reflect badly on me, and that's going to impact on my ability to provide for my family. That's why we get angry. So you can notice as the manager getting angry, or you can notice as the employee getting yelled at, right? If you notice that your manager is yelling at you, now you have an opportunity, right? Like, that's a threat. You can get angry back. You can have the same physiological threat response, or you can become curious about what the threat might be, and you can speak to that threat, and you can immediately put them at ease. Say, actually, you know what? This is not going to impact on you. We're going to do this and this and this, but I understand why you're getting angry. You feel, maybe not a good idea to tell your manager, I think you're feeling a little vulnerable, aren't you? That's probably just going to make them more mad. But if you can speak to what the underlying threat might be and how it might impact on their respect, their KPIs, their ability to provide for their family, then you're probably going to get through that anger situation a lot quicker, and you'll take it less personally, because they're not angry at you. They're angry because they are feeling threatened by the potential implication of something that you have some influence over. That's all.
Yeah, great perspective. And I think it starts with the intention of the leader creating safe spaces for people to reflect and not feel threatened, right? I have a question, and this is beautiful. I have someone in the audience, which means, we can take comments. If there is someone who's watching this live, they can ask questions. I have Javed Khan ask a question. If love is the highest form of what we are all chasing in leadership, why do so few leaders talk about it, let alone lead with it? And how can someone like me, not rooted in HR, but now stepping into a broader arena, infuse this truth into my public narrative without being misunderstood?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Javid. Why don't we talk about this? So I do talk about love at work. I've done a lot of executive offsites and board meetings where I talk about love at work. And it's funny, I did an executive offsite for a major multinational a couple of months ago, and the GCEO was like, what if we're not comfortable with this? And I was like, what do you mean not comfortable? He's like, the whole love at work thing, what if we're not comfortable with this? And I said, well, the science is really clear. Like, your people will live happier, healthier, and longer lives, and your bank will make more money. So if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. But that's because you value something more than your people and more than money. And you're a bank. Like, your shareholders might want to know whatever it is that you value more than those two things. And immediately he was like, right, okay, so how do we implement this? Like, do I just go around and tell everybody I love them? I'm like, why not? You can. The problem is that there's not a great understanding of what that means when I say it in a work context, because we're out of practice. We're not out of practice loving, okay? Get this right. Your ancestors earned you the right to be born by knowing who to trust, who was going to provide for them and protect them when they're not looking, who they were going to share their resources with. We call that love. Okay. It's an evolutionary default to trust and discretionary effort and shared values and shared resources. Now, if we bring that back into the office and I say, Samir, I love you, you're going to say, well, what do you mean by that? Because there's lots of different kinds of love, and there's a bit of confusion about what kind of love I'm talking about. I'm certainly not talking about sexual harassment. I shouldn't have to say it online, but I've said it before. Sexual harassment has nothing at all to do with love. These are completely separate subjects. Sexual harassment and love are diametrically opposed. They are not connected. But somehow there's confusion that love is somehow connected with sexual harassment. I think that's one issue. Second thing is people don't know what they mean by love. It's not romantic, okay? And it's not spiritual and it's not philosophical. It is an evolutionary psychological best practice for survival that bonds humans together. And wouldn't you want to do that in the place where you spend the most time every day with other humans? Like you're with your work colleagues more than you are with your own family, and you love your family. Why wouldn't you want to love the people that you're working with? The people who have the most amount of influence over the resources that you can bring back to that family that you love. Why not love them too? Then you both might play better, and you might get more productivity out of each other. But on the casual side of love, like I love chocolate, right? And I love Matt Damon. Matt Damon's a good actor, and I've never met him, but I think maybe I love that guy. And then and I love my children. On the more committed side, I love my children. I would do anything for my children. But somewhere between chocolate and children, neither of which have anything to do with romance, there's got to be something we can do to express love for other humans in the place where we spend the most time with other humans. I just think that makes sense. Also, it makes money.
So what I'm thinking is there must be a manager who's sitting over there and thinking,
yeah,
but I don't really want to love my people at work. I just want to go there, do my work, and make sure that I am able to provide for the people that I love. And that is my only objective when I go to work, so that I'm able to provide for the people that I truly love. I don't love my coworkers. I don't love my organization or company. And I just want to make sure that I get through the day so that I can come back to the people I love.
Yeah.
How would you speak to that mindset? I know you've given a lot of frameworks, but if after everything that you have said, if they come up with this, what would you say next?
Be greedy, be selfish. All of your ancestors earned you the right to be born by being greedy and being selfish. And the most effective form of selfishness is on teams. You can't survive the world alone. Okay, you can't even get through a day without interacting with 100 different lives, from the people that made your clothes to the person that put gas in your car, the person that built your phone that you're watching this show on now. Like you can't get through your day alone, and you can't survive alone. Okay, out there. It's funny. There's a show about, I think it's called Alone in the Outback or something like that, where they've got people that are off grid in Alaska, living completely off grid, and they're completely living, except they're all wearing clothes that are made in China, right? Like we're connected with each other. Everybody's connected with each other. And we learned thousands and thousands of years ago that the most effective form of selfishness is on teams. And we called those families, tribes, cities, nations, empires. And since the Industrial Revolution, which is like 4 old people ago, we call them businesses. And businesses are just economic tribes. We can provide, add value to a tribe in exchange for a share of the resources. And so I would tell you, as a manager, if you're going to work and not loving your people, you're missing out on the highest form of human performance. You're missing out on the highest performance and productivity. You're missing out on the highest sense of loyalty and discretionary effort that your team has to give, which means you're missing out on your personal potential. You're not living up to your potential as a human being. And maybe you're okay with that. Maybe you're okay with that for you. Maybe you're okay with that for your team. It's okay, but you could be making more money, I'm telling you. And you could be living a happier, healthier, longer life. And your team could be living happier, healthier, longer lives if they were doing what humans were designed to do best, and that is to love each other and participate with each other on teams and make money together and survive together.
And obviously you're not talking about Microsoft Teams, right? You're talking about Teams as not the software.
Let's call them economic tribes, okay? Not businesses, corporations. It's just names for an economic tribe. We used to look, every human has to add value to the tribe in exchange for a share of the resources, right? You want to eat, you don't have to be a hunter, but maybe you could be an educator or food preparation or an agriculturalist or an architect or a plumber or whatever. So you add value in exchange for a share of the resources. That's how we've been doing it in families, cities, nations, empires, tribes. And most of our ancestors, we didn't get to choose what we did. Okay, we grew up and we did what our father did, or we grew up and we did what our mother did. So we would end up adding value in the same way that our ancestors added value. Well, in the Industrial Revolution, we changed that. We could take all of the tailors and put them together in one factory and make them faster all together, and they could streamline their supply process and their sales process, and that would make them more efficient. We could take all of the smiths and put them together in one foundry, and that would make them faster and more efficient. Now you don't have to do what your dad did for work. You can do anything, but that's new.
But I want to build on that. You just said we were not able to choose before, and that's the same thing that managers would say. I cannot choose the people that I want to have on my team. Sometimes my organization imposes these people who I'm not able to work together with, and I have to deal with that.
That's correct. You do. You're the manager. Yeah, that's your responsibility. Hey, listen, managers are chosen by other managers, right? But leaders are chosen by followers. And the difference between who you are and who you could be is maybe that frame. You think of yourself as a leader, but if you look behind you and there's no one there, you're just managing. Okay? People don't work for you. They work with you, but they work for themselves. And it's a really important distinction. So if you go into work and not loving the people that you work with, that's fine, but it's not going to be that profitable for you. You're not going to have a good time. They're not going to have a good time. So might as well try. Also, it's my experience that there are very few actually evil people in the world. Most people are just doing the best they can with what they have. And if you look to try to connect with those people on your team in a way that's meaningful and personal, they're probably going to smile a little more. Eventually they'll trust you a little more, and eventually they'll put in a little bit higher effort and maybe even believe in themselves a little more. They might even end up, collaborating together better and sharing information that they never shared before. And that might make all of you more productive and higher performing. And then maybe everybody gets a promotion, everybody gets a raise. So the thing is, if you're going to work intentionally, not loving the people around you, well, you're robbing yourself of your highest potential and the highest quality of life that you can provide for yourself. And you're doing that for all of the people on your team too. So why would you be mean like that? That's just mean. Like, if you know what to do to make things better and you choose not to make things better, I think that's mean. And I think we should be less mean. Yeah.
and the insight that hit me while you were speaking is this, your title makes you a manager, your behavior makes you a leader.
That's correct. Yeah. Think of leadership as the worthiness to be followed, because we don't choose leaders because they're great. We choose leaders because following them makes us better. Like I choose leaders because when I follow them, the quality of my life improves. That's it. And that's true of every leader-follower relationship. I think it was John Maxwell said that leadership is a follower-led sport, and I completely agree with him. If you want to know whether or not you're a leader, just look around and see if anybody's following you, if they're emulating you, if they're saying things you say, if they're learning from you, if they're grabbing, bits of your character, your personality, your skills, whatever, then yeah, you're a leader. Otherwise, you're just going for a walk.
Yeah. So here's the next question over here. What signals show a manager's leadership effectiveness is declining?
People aren't following him. If you lose influence, then that's it. And look, the organization chart is a management chart. The leadership chart in an organization is completely informal. It has nothing to do with the org chart. Now, you might also follow one of your managers as a leader, but probably the leadership structure of your organization varies widely across the org chart. Like, if you were just to map it out, then what you'd want to do is you just ask all the employees, who are the 3 people that you go to most for help? Who are the 3 people whose voices in this organization you respect the most? And if there were 3 people that left this organization and you would follow them into another organization, who would those 3 people be? That word cloud is your leadership structure. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think leadership is really, and leaders don't make other leaders, right? Like leaders are chosen by followers. So the skill of leadership or the discipline of leadership is actually the ability to live a life worthy of being followed. And if your behaviors are improving the quality of other people's lives, then probably they're going to want to follow you because, well, guess what? Whatever it is that you're doing is improving the quality of their lives. And like I said, we don't follow people because they're great. We follow people because doing so improves the quality of our lives. So if you want to be a leader, exhibit behaviors that improve the quality of other people's lives around you and see what happens.
I know through my personal interactions, and we have done interviews before also, that you started your journey as an entrepreneur, and then you
Yeah.
started, you had your business, then you exited that, and then you started the coaching space, and you've given this TED talk over here, which really went viral, Meaning at Work, which I think people should
Thank you.
really go and look up over there. Uh, what was your personal leadership journey for yourself look like, and what is the biggest failure that you faced that
Oh,
taught
goodness.
you the most important lesson for yourself?
Yeah, look, I think failure is a decision to consciously avoid a learning opportunity. So when we decide to stop trying, then it's a failure. But if we learn from an unexpected or an undesired outcome, then it's not a failure, it's a learning opportunity. So I think I've always had that kind of in my mind. But I've started and exited a few companies successfully, and I've also buried a couple of unsuccessful companies, and it sucks. It sucks feeling like a failure and feeling like you've let people down, and like, yeah, when you have to shutter a business, and I've had to do that a couple of times. It's really, really disappointing. But you know what? It's not fatal. I didn't die. And so what do? You get up the next day and you go back to work because you're an apex predator and you've got a million years of wisdom in your head. You're not going to stop hunting. Um, so yeah, I've failed in a couple of companies. Well, no, I didn't fail. I learned from them. So I didn't. So my next companies were better. But also, I've been bankrupt, and it was a huge setback. Lost everything in 2008 in the global financial crisis. My investment broker went bankrupt, and so we just lost all of it, and it was very, very disappointing. Very disappointing. But did I die? Nope. Nope. Still here, and crossed the $1 million mark again. So I know how that can be done. And you know what? If at any point I have to close down a business, I know I can survive that. If at any point I go bankrupt again, I know I can survive that too. So yeah, we've all got setbacks and really hard experiences, but the hard experiences that don't kill you actually do make you stronger. And the difference between post-traumatic stress from a big event like closing down a business or going bankrupt, the difference between post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic growth is recovery, right? You have to take time to process what has happened, to understand the learning, and to let the learning make you stronger. We don't get stronger when we exercise, Samir. We get weaker. We're burning calories, burning energy. We're breaking our muscles down, and we're getting tired. We'll just get more and more tired, and we're actually breaking down. We get stronger when we sleep. So it's the recovery cycle, both physiologically and mentally. If you can do a lot, you can go through a lot of trauma, you can handle a lot of really adverse pressure, you can handle a tremendous amount of stress as an apex predator with a million years of wisdom inside you. You can handle a lot of stress, but it's going to make you weaker if you don't have recovery time. And that's the difference. So I think probably my best success was following up on really, really difficult experiences like being bankrupt or closing a business or getting divorced, following those up with actually just really good recovery. If you have recovery, you get stronger. If you don't, you'll get weaker.
And when failures hit managers, for example, they obviously think it is catastrophic, right? They will lose their jobs, or they will uh, become irrelevant, or uh, they have to deal with uncertainty. And because of their challenge of not having exercised the muscle of dealing with uncertainty,
Yeah.
they want certainty, which is why they keep telling people what to do, and they don't go into the space of being curious and being accepting of possibilities and being coachable. All of those things is because they don't know how to handle uncertainty. Uh,
Yeah.
how should a manager think or approach uncertainty according to you?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think curiosity is the number one driver of adaptability. It's like, so you can see something coming at you that's really, really big, and you can try and fight or flee or yell at it, whatever, or you can become curious about what you might learn through this experience, because it's probably not going to kill you. Very few things that happen at work will actually kill you. So yeah, you can become curious about it. What can I learn from this? How can I avoid this in the future? What kind of teammates do I need to have around me? If you allow yourself to become curious about the adventure that you've been invited to, rather than the trauma that's being forced on you, that's just a frame, right? Change is an invitation. And you can resist that change as trauma, or you can invite that change as adventure. And either way, you're going to go through the same experience, but you're not going to come out at the same way. So you can choose trauma and resistance to change, and you'll come out one way, or you can choose an invitation to an unexpected adventure and come out a different way. And all of that happens in your head, right? We can't control much of the world. We can't. There's not much of the world that we can control, but we have 100% control over how we experience it, and we can choose that experience every day.
And a manager's role, sometimes they might feel that they have to operate from a lens of certainty and not curiosity. So they have to balance both. They have to have certain things where they have to be certain,
right.
which is where they'll put on the hat of manager, and they'll have to exercise curiosity, which is the hat of being a leader. How does one balance the two, the certainty and the curiosity?
These are two sides of the same coin. It's order and chaos. Certainty is order, and uncertainty is chaos, right? But we actually have been balancing these in our lives. You balance these all the time. You're in your relationships, at home, like we're always balancing order and chaos, right? Like, so you buy a house, and then what do you have to do? You have to furnish the house, and it's chaos. People are moving things in, you're painting the walls, you're hanging pictures. And then as soon as all of the rooms are decorated and all of the paintings are on the wall, what do? You remodel. You have to tear out the bathroom and redo the bathroom, so it's more chaos. So what happens is we take chaos and we turn it into order, right? And then it's too orderly. Everything's too perfect. There's too much, so we remodel the bathroom and we create chaos. Oh goodness, now the workers are there again, and all the plumbing's broken and I can't get my NOCs. And so we fix the bathroom and we get everything good now, and then now it's too orderly. And so what do? We buy a new rug, and then we have to move the rug in, like so. And in your relationship, it's the same thing. You get into a rut where you're like doing the same thing every day over and over again. It's too much, and so you blow it up. You have a big fight, and then you have to create the chaos, but you can't stay in chaos. It's overwhelming. So you have to make peace, and then you make things right again, and then you get into the same sort of patterns, and you do the same thing in your job, right? As soon as you're bored in your job and the same thing over and over, you just quit. You quit, and then you have this incredible chaos in your life. And so the balance between certainty and uncertainty can be seen most clearly in the physiological evolution of our brains. In your brain, you have two halves very clearly demarked, right? The left half of your brain is categories, biases, heuristics, numbers. The right part of your brain is language, creativity, art, music, culture. So even in the physiological evolution of the way your brain sits inside your skull, you've got order and chaos. You're never going to solve that puzzle. You're always going to be moving between order and chaos. And some people prefer a little more order, and some people prefer a little bit more chaos. And you can handle chaos in one part of your life as long as it's not in every part of your life. That's overwhelming. And you can handle order in one part of your life as long as it's not too orderly in every part of your life. That's tyranny. We hate that. So somewhere between communism and anarchy, we're always looking for balance on a micro scale in our jobs, on a macro scale in our countries. We're always looking for that balance of certainty and uncertainty. We can't have too much of either. We need them both.
Amazing. We're coming towards the close of the session, and I want to ask you, what are you irritated about the most right now? Because you're irritated about something, and then you start working on it, you start doubling down on it, you do research, you read your next book and all of that. So what's your big irritation or itch that you're scratching right now?
This one. This book came out like 2 months ago. Yeah.
All right.
My big irritation is that people don't understand what executive coaching is, what the qualifications or required, expertise of an executive coach should be, and they don't treat executive coaching like executive coaching. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer, right? I'm really sad that I had to write this book. I am. It's upsetting to me because how do I explain? A violin coach, right? The violin coach's job is to help a violin player play better violin. Okay. And every top tier violin player in every philharmonic orchestra in the world has a coach. Can their coach play violin better than they can? Probably not. This is tier 1 coaching, right? So the coach can't play as well as the violin player can, but the coach can coach the player at their level of play. And it's the same in athletics, right? An athletic coach, their job is to help an athlete perform better as an athlete. Now, can an Olympic coach play the game better than their athlete can? No, that's an Olympic athlete. But every Olympic athlete has an Olympic coach. That's how they get there. That's how they stay there. And it's the same with executive coaching. There's this confusion about what executive coaching is. Well, I will make it very clear. An executive coach's job is to help an executive perform better in their executive role. And if the coach can't help the executive perform better as an executive, they are not an executive coach. That's it. What is required to help an executive perform better as an executive? Well, you need business acumen. You need some understanding of organizational dynamics, a better than average understanding of psychology, leadership, management, human motivation theory, structural things like finance, operations, HR. Yeah, it's hard to prepare as an Olympic coach. And it should be, right? It should take you a while to become an Olympic athletic coach. And it's the same with executive coaching. If you want to coach a tier 1 CEO in a multinational organization that's responsible for 100,000 families, yeah, you're going to need some acumen. You cannot take a 6-week course and coach your friends for 50 hours and think you can step into that CEO's office and add value. No, executive coaching is a very niche coaching responsibility. And the best executive coaches on the planet, we don't just sit in front of our clients and ask questions and help them to solve their own problems. Olympic coaches don't sit in front of their athletes asking them probing questions, hoping that they'll reach enough insight to improve their performance on the field. It's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. That is not top tier high performance coaching. So yeah, the best high performance executive coaches in the world are really, really clever. Now, can I run my clients' companies better than they can? Absolutely not. No, but I can coach them at their level of play and they get better.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Corrie. And I think people should go and watch your TED Talks. You have delivered 3 of them, I think, right?
That's right.
You have
3.
delivered 3 TED Talks so far. Look for Corrie Block on YouTube. Hit him up on corrieblock.com. Is there anything else you want to say to the audience over there who might be listening? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Just in case nobody's told you in a while, I love you.
I love you too, Corrie. You're amazing. Thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate. I know the network was a little glitchy, so to the audience, I would say apologies for that. Hopefully, I will sit in a chair next to Corrie and do probably another conversation once again. I was able to take a lot of value. I hope the audience, as you as well as me, to lead. Thank you so much, Corrie, for leading
My
with
pleasure.
clarity.
My pleasure.
Thank you.